I mean, James is here. Like he's logged in nice and early. Like I feel like we could bring him right into the conversation. Why wait till after the commercial break? Like when you got greatness here, let's talk to him. You obviously, I'm sure you, James,
Yeah.
welcome.
Hi guys. How are you? It's good to see both of you together.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be back together, and it's great to be here with you. Certainly one of our favorite conversations of the week. That and get Kings fans just love this. We're talking about Buddy, and we'll get to the Ben Simmons stuff. We'll talk about Tyrese. We'll get to all that stuff here in just a minute. But I want to bring you into this conversation we're having with Ben Simmons. Kenny laid out the numbers, or excuse me, of Buddy Hield. Kenny laid out the numbers of how many threes Buddy shot compared to how many field goals he shot last year. And we brought up a specific point and I'm sure you remember this, where Deuce asked Luke Walton about that in a press conference. And Luke was like, yeah, no, that's what we want Buddy to do. If Buddy Hield is on this roster, don't they have to reevaluate what they're doing with him?
Man, I don't know. If he's on this roster, I want him shooting 1,000 threes a season. Like that's what you need him to do. I mean, he's the floor spacer. It is what it is. So, like, I think you have playmakers. You have creative guys like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton and even now Davion Mitchell. Like, look, Buddy has to space the floor if he's going to be on the roster. And to me, the more he dribbles, the less I like it. He's much more accurate when he one or two dribbles or even no dribbles than when he puts the ball on the floor and tries to create for himself. We saw last year his usage rate dropped from like 27.7 all the way down to like 20.3. So they took the ball out of his hands a lot more. But that's why you saw some of the other guys' assist numbers start to go up. So for me, and I think I've made this point to you before, if you are talking about Ben Simmons, a potential Ben Simmons trade, like there could be a case made that the Kings would be better having Harrison Barnes in that trade than they would Buddy Hield, just because of the sheer volume of threes that Buddy can shoot. And if you have two incredibly rangy, long defenders in Ben Simmons and Rashawn Holmes as your starting 4 or 5, now you can probably go smaller at the 3 with a Buddy Hield just because he can space the floor better than anyone else that you have and better than almost anyone else in the league, really. I mean, as far as a catch and shoot player, he's accurate and he can shoot in bunches. So, yeah, it's intriguing. Like, there's a lot to figure out here.
So here's what I'll say about that, though, James, as I read the numbers. And maybe this is a small sample size because you're looking at 3 seasons. But since that 2018-2019 season where he averaged 20 points a game, the more threes he shoots, the further down his percentages go and his points per game go down. I think the more he just focuses on just shooting threes, the worse his game is.
Well, there came a point where he had to make a decision whether he was going to be a pure scorer or a pure shooter. And, when you get up to the volume of 3-point attempts that he's taking, there's no way to get to be a 45% shooter or something. It's just so incredibly hard shooting that many shots. I mean, like even the greatest shooters that we've ever seen, when they get up into that type of, it's almost like a running back. Once they hit like 400 carries in a season, they've got like a season left in them. That's it. Like Buddy just can't just keep shooting and shooting and shooting threes. But why I bring up the scorer versus the shooter is it Buddy's inability to get to the free throw line, which is something that I harp on him like nonstop. That's what separates him from being a scorer. Like if he wants to average 20 a game, it's not that hard. He's got to get to the free throw line 3 times a game. That will get him at least 1 or 2 more open shots, because if he can draw a foul, it changes the entire complexity of it. So to me, like he made that decision on his own, and it's to the detriment of the Kings, because you have a guy who should be a 90% free throw shooter who gets there like 1.5 times a game. I mean, you look at his stats. I think it was something like, of the 72 games, it was something like 30 something games he didn't shoot a free throw at all.
Yeah.
It's startling.
It was pretty jarring.
Yeah.
James Ham, this is a James Ham tease. Don't go anywhere. James isn't going anywhere. We're diving in for the next. We're going commercial free till the top of the 4 o'clock hour with James Ham here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Nice.
Yeah. What's up, James?
What's happening, guys?
How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude.
What shirt is that? Is that a baseball shirt?
This is my Say Ferris.
Oh,
Do you get the reference? Do you know the reference?
I know the movie. I've seen bits and parts of it.
Okay.
I don't know what Say Ferris means though, but I'm assuming we're talking Ferris Bueller, right?
Yeah. They the people at his school get convinced that he's gonna die, and it becomes like a rumor that's spread around because he called in sick one day. So they start like Say Ferris becomes it's now a band, right? Yeah. But it's based off of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and basically everyone around the school, they start a collection. They're trying to raise money. It becomes like this ridiculous thing where he goes from having a sniffle to people are saying he needs like a kidney transplant or something. So
it's a great movie.
I've seen people write articles,
it is a great movie,
do podcasts about how, we all, I haven't seen it, but everybody enjoys the movie, right? But they take a step back and they're like, hold on, man. He did all this in one day. He went to the damn Chicago Cubs game and had time to do it. He
got a home run. Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, it's good stuff.
Singing a parade.
Yeah.
That's
I love
John Hughes, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a John Hughes movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Yeah, it's man, what's her name? Gray.
Jennifer.
She was Jennifer Gray. Yeah. Dirty Dancing.
Because you've got a table at.
Yeah.
Jennifer Gray, Matthew Broderick.
His girlfriend's name is Sloan, but I can't remember.
Sloan and Cameron. Steven. Was it? No, it's not Sloan Steven. It's like
Sloan. That's a different movie.
Sloan is definitely Sloan. Sloan Peterson.
Yeah. Mr. Peterson.
Sloan Peterson.
This is Mr. Peterson calling.
I love have my daughter out front.
Have my daughter out front. Yeah. Kenny's shaking his head. I have no idea what these people are talking about. I can't tell you who Rick Ross is, but I can quote that Bueller all day long.
Ferris Bueller, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles.
I love all the John Hughes
but
movies.
I haven't seen the movies.
Yeah, I love.
You haven't seen them?
John Hughes
I haven't seen. I've seen so when I was a kid, like I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, we would spend our days in the summer at my grandmother's house, and particularly in the morning before my afternoon schedule TV took place. Saved by the Bell, California Dreams, all those good ones, right? Sports Center. In the morning, my other cousin who was there with me, she would just watch these random movies that would be on HBO. So like random, so stuff like that. So I would kind of half watch and half not watch. This is where we would always see Weekend at Bernie's. You guys ever seen that movie, One of the Guys?
I think so.
Where the young lady acts as if she's a guy, like cut her hair short or whatever.
It's been many years. Yep.
Yeah. So all these little movies like that would come on randomly, and I was trying to do something else. I was like waiting until I could watch what I wanted to watch. So I would see a little bit of it here and there, but never really sit down and watch them.
I would go to my grandma's house and I would watch Perry Mason. Like I've seen like the old black and white
a grandma thing. Yeah.
Perry Mason. Yeah. So
Roddy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Roddy say.
And now, like, I'm addicted to TV. I binge watch every television show you could ever possibly imagine. Like, and my ability to binge watch, I'll take up against anyone. Like I've gone through probably, like, I took last week off. So, man, I watched all of Ray Donovan, which is 7 seasons, an hour a show.
Man,
I don't even want to know.
Hang on, guys.
Yep.
That was the top 5 commercial break over on twitch.tv/ESPN1320, youtube.com/ESPN1320.
We're
doing I
knew somebody would bring that up, though. I knew I wasn't going to say it, but I knew somebody would bring it up.
What the scene from one of the guys. Yeah. I mean, I know Revenge of the Nerds has been brought up here too. A lot of these movies, like, because James, for those who are listening on the radio on the Odyssey app, James is wearing a Say Ferris shirt, and that brought up, like, Kenny got it but didn't get it. So we were talking about Ferris Bueller. We're talking about Hughes Brothers, or Hughes Brothers. That's a different genre of movies. We were talking about John Hughes movies, and that led to just movies we watched when we were younger, and now we've got Revenge of the Nerd references here, and then some of the inappropriate scenes from all of those movies. But that's the fun we have over here on Twitch and YouTube when James Hams joins us. It's not always Kings. It's not always Buddy Hield and three-point efficiency and Tyrese Haliburton and Ben Simmons trades and all of that stuff. So let's bring you in on the question of the last couple of days. I turned heel yesterday. I grew the black beard, became Hollywood Hogan, and asked the question, why is it so outrageous to include Tyrese Haliburton in the deal for Ben Simmons? So let me ask you this. What are the like, how far would you go? Because I know you're a Ben Simmons guy, right? I hope so, because I've been referring to you as a Ben Simmons guy all day.
Yeah. No, I dig Ben Simmons. I mean, I see how he fits. Like, I think some people don't, but I mean, I do see how he fits. But go ahead.
Would you include Tyrese in a deal?
No. I mean, like, look, when push comes to shove, I mean, you have to consider everything. Like, I'm not considering De'Aaron Fox at all.
Right.
But, I can also see a world where, De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell are like AI and Eric Snow, or you have your defensive stopper, or like Doug Christie and Mike Bibby, just like we could come up with a bunch of guards where one guard is a defensive stalwart and the other one is the guy who gets all the fame and glory. So, I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, I think you're taking a step back. And look, when you find a diamond in the rough, when you find, something special like Haliburton, you hold on to him as much as you can. Now, like if there were a bigger name and it was another guy who is around 25 to 27 under contract long-term and a superstar without like any chinks in the armor, then I'm listening. And Haliburton could be on the table, like even if you didn't want him to be, but I just don't think Ben Simmons is that player. Like I think that you can, if there's going to be a Ben Simmons deal that gets done, I do not think it should have to include that. I think that you should be able to get it done with, Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, maybe a third team getting involved and helping them get some other pieces, but then like, let's talk about draft stock. How much am I giving up? And that's kind of where I'm at. And like I made this point with on a podcast yesterday. Like, look, once you draft a player, it doesn't really even matter how good they are. So like Tyrese Haliburton was exceptional for the number 12 pick in the draft, but he still averaged like 13 points a game, right? So like on the outside, he doesn't have nearly the value that he does on the inside. He's so much more valuable to the Kings because they found him because he's under contract for cheap for the next 3 or 4 years, and then even team control for quite a while. So he has a huge amount of value, but it's kind of like buying a car. And the second you drive the car off the lot, they drop in value by 30%. Draft picks are the same way. Like the number 9 pick in the draft was worth more than what Davion Mitchell is worth right now. And Davion Mitchell showed up and was huge in Summer League. It's still the number 9 pick in the draft is worth more. And the second that you make that selection, it's just like the Warriors can keep talking about, the Weissman, Moody, Kuminga trio that they could offer up. Well, those guys were worth a whole lot more as the number 2, the number 7, and the number 14 pick than they are right now, even if, they hit. And it's just kind of the dynamic of the NBA that Kings draft picks are worth a ton. And, that's why I want to know, how much do I have to give up? Is it 2 firsts and a second? Is it 3 firsts? Is it 2 firsts and a pick swap? Is it 1 first and 2 seconds and a pick swap? Like, look, let's get creative here. Let's figure out what it's going to take, because that's a lot to give up for a player who has a bunch of issues. He's really good defensively, but he has a bunch of issues, and he's not a perfect prospect. He's not a perfect player. And I'd like to, I would like to be in the room and hear what it is that they're talking about, how much they actually want, Philadelphia actually wants for him.
Yeah. You brought him up a little bit, and you talked about how the value of the number 9 pick is it's like a car, and what you said makes perfect sense, where once you make the pick, it's the value of it kind of goes down a little bit. I'd make the argument, because I'm with you, I wouldn't trade Tyrese Haliburton for Ben Simmons. This may be jumping out the window, I wouldn't include Davion Mitchell in a deal for Ben Simmons. I think Davion, and it's not just recency bias with him in the summer league and everything like that. I'm more confident in his game. And we've had this conversation throughout the show. I'm more confident in him elevating his game than I am Ben Simmons as the years go along. Damian asks the question all the time, why can't Ben Simmons get better? Well, the reason that I don't believe that he can get any better is because he's never gotten any better. He's the same person from LSU to now. He's never improved his game. So why would he start at 25 years old?
I mean, like, you have a good point. Like, Ben Simmons is what he is, right? And even if he is what he is really good.
It's good.
Like, what he is a 3-time All-Star. Like, and if somehow he continues that trend and he's a 10-time All-Star, he's a Hall of Famer. Like that. I mean, like, I just put it like plainly, it doesn't matter if he averages 14 a game. His impact on the game, both as passer and playmaker, but also as a rebounder and also as a defensive player, there's a lot there. But I still believe that there's a ton of potential for him to improve. And like, I've been writing on this and I haven't published, but like, I kind of look at him a little in the same way of like Chris Webber. When Chris Webber was available and everyone's like, look, is Webber, is he going to work out in Sacramento? He didn't want to be here. And then once you get to Sacramento, I think you find out something completely different about this community, about the way that you're looked at from the outside, from the inside, how the fan base deals with you. I think what Ben Simmons needs, he doesn't need a Lakers experience. He doesn't need a Golden State Warriors experience where like all of the magnifying glass that he's been under in Philly is going to be there. What he needs is a soft landing spot to get his confidence back, to figure out who and what he is, and then to be embraced and loved and sort of built up. And so like having a guy like Rico Hines on the staff, which is so well regarded throughout the entire league, he's a guy that can reach in and maybe pull something out of Ben Simmons that someone else hasn't been able to do before. And, having a mentor like Doug Christie on the staff, like, I know Doug so well that I'll tell you, like, he will make a difference in how these players think off the court, how they think of the game on the court, how they treat their bodies. Like, this is a mentor that should have been working with young players in Sacramento for a long time. But it's someone that can sort of reach out and connect with somebody. And I think that's what Simmons needs. I think he needs to sort of disappear from the main stage, reinvent himself, and then, maybe in a couple of years get rediscovered, or maybe like Webber, he finds a home and he finds a team that he becomes that piece that lets them get to the next level, that lets them become, like, I think if they have Ben Simmons on the roster, they're probably looking, or depending on how much you have to give up, but you're probably looking around a 6 seed for this team right now in year 1. And then by year 3, like, you could be talking about a contender. Like, we don't know. Like, this team has that potential, and the players around him could have that potential. So that's where I look at this and say, look, I think he could be he doesn't have the big smile of Chris Webber. He doesn't have the Hollywood of Chris Webber, although he does have some of that. But for every bit as good offensively as Webber was, Ben Simmons is that good defensively, and he makes his teammates better. That's just, it is what it is. Some guys have that ability to make their teammates better. I think everybody on the Kings roster would be better with Ben Simmons next to him.
James Ham, Kenny, anxious to get your guys' reaction to this. Kenny, I can see that you want to react to that, but before you do, Sam Amick, and shout out to Sakir and Bagley for making sure we saw this. Sam Amick wrote on The Athletic just moments ago, James. According to a source with knowledge of their situation, the Kings spoke to the Sixers weeks ago and made it clear that neither De'Aaron Fox nor Tyrese Haliburton would be included in a possible Simmons deal. That stance, the source said, has not and will not change, and the internal expectation is that the core of their roster will remain the same heading into training camp later this month. Sam writes later on in the article, per the source, the Kings and Sixers, have not talked about Simmons since that conversation weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that as well, that those guys are just off limits. Like, I mean, you didn't ask, are they off limits? You asked, would I have them off limits?
Mhm.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Like Sam, I'm close to Sam. He's a great reporter. I totally agree. And I do know that the initial conversation was, hey, we would like to build a package around Buddy Hield, and the 76ers came back and said, hey, we would like De'Aaron Fox. And they said, okay, well, that's the end of that conversation. So look, that like a couple of weeks ago, that's like years in basketball, in the basketball world. That could, like, they could reignite talks today and have it done by 9:00 tonight. It just depends, because at this point, like Keith Pompey, who's a great reporter for Philadelphia Examiner, I believe, he's the one that broke the story, right?
Yep.
He just basically took a cleaver out and knocked the legs out of the Philadelphia 76ers brass. I mean,
Which had to be by design, right?
Right.
Well, it was probably by design by somebody.
Ben Simmons, Rich Paul,
somebody on the outside. Yeah, exactly,
okay.
exactly. But I mean, like, that just took their legs out from underneath them. And, they met last week. That's what we're talking about. Like, right. So it's not like they met today. Right. They met last week and had that discussion. And it had been like, Keith was probably, he heard of it, but was probably trying to source it out and get it, multiple angles on it before he wrote the piece. So that probably took a couple of days, because a lot of people aren't going to want to talk about that. But the second that happens, you took a guy who, again, he was up here at one point. At the end of the playoffs, he was down here. They tried to build him back up with all of this crazy nonsense, like all these ridiculous packages that they were throwing out for Ben Simmons to other teams. Again, this is a guy that they want James Harden type contract, right? They type return, but they couldn't use him to get James Harden last year. They tried. It didn't work. So, you know what I mean? Like, he does not have the same value. And that's before he flamed out in the playoffs completely. It's not like the whole world didn't see it. It's not like the whole world didn't hear Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid and Danny Green all just take turns running the dude over with a bus. So, like, I'm confused where Philadelphia thinks their value is, but they just got a reminder. They got a reminder when Keith Pompey dropped that news yesterday that, like, look, you guys, the value that you think you have in him, it's not there. Like, you can keep trying to drum up value as much as you want, but it's not there. So let's get to the table and really talk about what it is that you can get for him and sort of start there. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you 100%. And this is where I told Damian this earlier. The accolades that Ben Simmons has, and it always gets brought up when somebody like myself's like, oh, he's not that dude. James Ham, Damian Barley, like, he's a 3-time All-Star. He's all defender. I'm said, you know what? The accolades I can't take away from him. He is a 3-time All-Star. He will be at least that for the rest of his career. But they don't match up with what people see. They don't match up with our eyes. What we see, and the example that I use is, and I know you're not saying that he's this guy, but Luka has been in the league 3 years, I think, right? He may be a 2. He's about to be a 3-time All-Star. If Miami was called by Philadelphia and was like, hey, we want to do a BAM for Ben Simmons trade, Miami would be like, no, get lost. You know what I mean? I'm not interested. Goodbye. If Miami got a call from Dallas saying, hey, we want to do a BAM for Luka trade, oh, hell yeah. You ain't even got to finish the conversation. Luka, come on to Miami. And I feel like with Ben Simmons, even though he has the accolades of a 3-time All-Star, I don't know if there's many, if any, other All-Stars or borderline All-Stars that teams would accept a trade for Ben Simmons for. And that's where I say, like, 3-time All-Star, I can't take away the accolades, but our eyes, he does stuff that are cool, but he's not that guy that Philly's trying to portray, or that other people are trying to portray him as.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like D'Angelo Russell. Like, if you're going to sit there and float him out there as like a former All-Star that could get swapped for Ben Simmons, to me, that's not legitimate. Like, I mean, he wasn't a legitimate All-Star. I mean, he was on the All-Star team, but to me, that wasn't like, he would be like the 20th guard in the Western Conference, like, right? If you were going to really look at the All-Star balloting when he got in that year. So I get what you're saying. Like, But at the same time, you have to look at every situation and you have to figure out if it works for you know, if he makes you better as a team, because it doesn't work for everybody. Just like we talked about this trade, like I talked about this yesterday, like look, if Damian Lillard becomes available, right? Everyone just says, oh, well, Philadelphia is waiting to see if Damian Lillard becomes available. Well, who in their right mind said that the Portland Trailblazers are trading Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons? Yeah. No one in Portland that I've heard of. Like there hasn't been like, oh yeah, well, we're just waiting to figure if he doesn't want to be here, we're just going to trade him to Philadelphia.
Right.
That's not the way the conversation goes. Like again, if every team is in a different situation, Portland, if they're giving up Damian Lillard, they're basically saying like, look, we're shot. We're going to blow this thing up. So let me go to the Warriors and let me go get that package of 3 young players and let me build off of that. And then give me 2 or 3 draft picks and stuff like that. Let me build this way. Well, Philadelphia is in a weird situation where they can't give up Simmons for nothing. They've got to find pieces that actually help them because they're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They busted out in the playoffs, but I mean, they were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They are close. So what they need is players that can help them now. But to your point, like, look, they're like 20 something all-stars every season. That's it. Right. Mm-hmm. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and I think even Tobias Harris, we're all stars. So if you think you're going to if you're going to trade Ben Simmons and there's like 21 all-stars available because you've got 3 of them and he's one of them, like there aren't teams out there that are going to say, yeah, I'll give you my all-star for him. There just aren't. So you have to go around and figure out what the best package is. And I'm not saying that Buddy Hield is the best package, but I am saying like, I think Buddy Hield fits that roster a whole lot better than Andrew Wiggins.
I think it's up there, James, to be honest.
Yeah.
With you. I mean, package is up there.
His ability to shoot the 3 ball, all that stuff. And then like, look, if you're getting 2 or 3 first-round draft picks and they're not just first-round draft picks, they're not Brooklyn Nets or Los Angeles Lakers or some crappy draft pick. We're talking about Sacramento Kings draft picks, man. These things are gold. Like they are.
That's not a good
gold.
thing.
Yeah. 15 seasons of playoffs missed. You're talking about a lottery pick in any other year. So you get what I'm saying? Like this is actually a pretty good package. And the key to those picks are not that Philadelphia is going to use those to draft players to get better down the road. They're going to use those to go get the actual players that they want outside of the Buddy Hield trade, outside, to add to their roster by making those picks available to other teams. And they have tremendous value.
Yeah. I also got to wonder, James, how, teams around the league, they're obviously tuned into the Philadelphia Inquirer and what Keith Pompey wrote and what you write and Sam writes. And like, they're saying, yeah, the Kings are shutting down Ben Simmons for De'Aaron and Tyrese, and the Warriors basically publicly laughed at the trade that Daryl Morey put out there. Toronto shut it down. Like all of these teams looking around the league, like, yo, put together our scraps and see if they take it. Like, because at this point, you just said this, and you said it perfectly. What Keith Pompey wrote, that cut the legs out of the Philadelphia 76ers. They've got no leverage moving forward. Now, you could argue Ben Simmons doesn't have any leverage either, but these are 2 teams, these are 2 entities in a stalemate that are just staring at each other like, what are we going to do here? And I think everyone else around the league is like, yeah, who's our Buddy Hield equivalent? Like, let's put that together. We were talking about Andrew Wiggins and perhaps James Wiseman or something like that for Golden State. You could run through team after team after team, and there are no all-stars included in any of these trade proposals.
Yeah, but let's be honest. You're talking about a Rich Paul client. So Ben Simmons does have a tremendous amount of leverage because he's a Rich Paul client. And so
I understand that, but
it matters. Like very specifically, I remember the Kevin Martin trade when the Kings traded Kevin Martin to the Houston Rockets. And in that deal, like initially Tracy McGrady, who was broken down and done, was coming to Sacramento. And there was a call at the time, I can't remember, I think it was Dan Fagan that called and said, hey, look, Tracy McGrady's not going to the Kings. And the Kings are like, well, we already got the deal done. They said no. Like, look, if you're going to make that deal, then we're going to shut you down. We're going to lock you out. And like, what does that mean? It's like, well, if like say Tyreek Evans comes up for his rookie scale extension, then we're just going to walk away. Like we're going to freeze you out. So what happened? The Kings traded Tracy McGrady in the same trade. They made it an additional team the New York Knicks and brought back Larry Hughes, who already had a wrist injury when it was done, shot completely, and never played. He didn't even fly to Sacramento. He didn't even come to Sacramento at all. So like there is that angle to it. He does have leverage. He can, like, look, you're talking about the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. If they don't have Ben Simmons, they are not nearly as good as they were before. If he's gone, if he just sits, they're going to lose games. They won't be the number 1 seed. They're going to have to figure out a way to get back into it. And Simmons is eventually going to make his money. He's on a guaranteed contract for $147 million. So like, eventually he's going to make his money. You know, if he's got to give up a couple of 100,000 or $1 million or whatever on the front ends, it's no big deal.
The reason why, you know, we believe that he has leverage. Rich Paul does have leverage. I don't think he has nearly as much as he thinks, because when you're dealing with a trade and you're dealing with somebody like Ben Simmons, who has 3-4 years left on his contract, you need somebody else to tango with. Right. So in the story that you talked about, which makes 100% sense, I know all this stuff happens. If the Kings or the Rockets or whoever don't have another person to tango with to say, hey, I'm going to ship him to wherever, San Antonio, wherever he went after that, it almost doesn't matter. Like, Rich Paul may not want him here in Sacramento, but a Philly is like, we got no other offers. And the teams that you want to go to, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, they're not offering. They don't want you. So
the Lakers can't offer.
No, the Lakers can't. I mean, and can really the Clippers? You know, Golden State can. They can, but really, like, again, like, look what happened to Kelly Oubre last year in Golden State. Like, he just became the scapegoat for everything that was wrong. And it's like, well, okay, it's possible that you're just not really that good anymore as a team. Like, you're just not there, and that you got players that are playing major minutes that are more like, you know, 11th, 12th, 13th men on regular rosters, but you're running them out there and playing them 25 minutes a game because you have to. So I get what you're saying. And I do, Philadelphia is going to do what's best for them. Like, they're not going to take trade requests from a 25-year-old kid and say, okay, the thing is, you want out of here, we'll get you out of here. Wherever you land, that's on you. That's we got what we got for you, and that's it. Yeah. And again, to go back to the Weber thing that I started with earlier, like, while this might not be where Ben Simmons would go, yeah, let's go to Sacramento, he'd be foolish not to come here. He would be absolutely foolish, because this is a place where he can rebuild his entire image, where he gets to play with players that are his age, that have speed and quickness and all this stuff that he really does play to. He could come in. It's the worst defensive team in the league last year. What are they going to look like this year if that Ben Simmons and then these other pieces that they've added? Also, what if you finish top 10 and it's the Ben Simmons effect? Now you've created this aura of you are the savior. He'll be embraced by the community. He'll be loved by the community. If he gets a team to the playoffs, if they go further, like, he will be able to. And that's where I think, like, look, 14 points a game, you can say, oh, he's so limited offensively. I think he can start to rise. He'll get in a position where people are holding him accountable in a different way. He'll feel love in a different way as a basketball player. And so, like, look, I think that when you look at all of the teams that, you know, the 3 California teams, like, he's not a savior for the Warriors. Like, and that team thinks that Klay Thompson, well, the fans and, you know, a lot of media think, oh, Klay Thompson's coming back. Okay. After missing a season with a torn Achilles and a season with a torn ACL. So he's missed 2 years of basketball. He's now in his 30s, and you just think he's going to walk on the court and just be the same guy. Like, that's not how it works. So each of these teams, you know, where does he fit in with the Lakers? Well, they'd have to give up either LeBron or AD, or they'd have to give up Russ. That's it. Like, they have no other way to get him. So, like, what are you saying? He's got to go to the Clippers, or he's got to go to Golden State? I just think, like, being realistic about what his best position to go to is, it might be like a team like Sacramento. It could be a team like Portland if Portland was willing to give up specific assets. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's a perfect fit for him anywhere.
I also wonder at what point, you know, like, Daryl Morey looks at Rich Paul and goes, dude, I'm trying. Like the process is obviously moving like a bit too slow, which is why the Keith Pompey article came out. Like you mentioned that they talked last week. Like, that is in my opinion, that is a play to kind of speed up the process a little bit. Like, you're moving too slow. We got camp for, I think for the Kings starts in 27 days or whatever it is. We got preseason games around the corner. We've got the regular season coming. This isn't moving fast enough. I wonder at what point Daryl Morey just goes, dude, I'm trying. Like, I'm not taking Marvin Bagley and John Salmon's contract or whatever the Kings have to offer. I'm not taking that back. Like, we've got to get something back that helps our team get better.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, Morey has to be reasonable, because what we've seen,
100%.
The offers out there are just ridiculous. The San Antonio thing, where it's like, look, we actually want to own the Alamo Dome, and and you have to give us the Alamo as well. And they wanted control of their draft for 7 years.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. All of it's ridiculous. I watched, what was the trade? The Larry Nance trade, right? So Portland in that deal where they got Nance and Markkanen went to Cleveland. Again, what was Portland doing? They gave up a lottery protected 1 through 14 pick for the next 7 years. That means they can't trade a single pick until that's taken care of. So for
tragic,
they just locked up all of their draft picks. What were you thinking? You can't trade your picks. Yeah. So, it's 1 through 14. You're saying, oh, well, it's Portland. They'll make the playoffs this year and it will get relayed. It's okay, well, you get to the trade deadline. You can't trade any of your other picks. You can't trade them at all because you can't. They're all locked up.
For Larry Nance?
Yeah, until you actually get to a point where that the pick is being relayed, then you can't trade a pick out because it could be the 2023 pick. So you can't trade 22 or 24. You can't do it. So basically we talked about this Omri Caspi, JJ Hickson trade. They just lock themselves into that deal, and it could be for a year. It could be for 4 years. You don't know. So all of these things are crazy. So again, I just don't know what teams have the assets that to really put up an offer. And then, you're going to have to make a decision if you're Philadelphia about what actually does make sense for you today and what can you get with whatever assets you're getting for tomorrow. Can you wait for guys like Weissman and, when you already have Embiid and you already have Andre Drummond on the roster, can you wait 2 or 3 years to see if you got something there? I don't know. Not if you're the number one seed.
Drummond was there.
Yeah.
I completely forgot he was there.
That's James, we've seen the national media, come around and, poke their head around the Kings or whatever and talk about grading their offseason. We've seen a bunch of C's, C minuses. We had David Aldridge, who I respect and I really like. But
I do too.
You may not feel that way after I've been railing on him for the last week. He said the Kings had the second worst offseason in all of basketball. What do you think about what they were able to do this offseason? Really just retaining guys and getting a couple guys here and there.
The
draft pick as well, Davion Mitchell.
Yeah. I disagree because I think when you're looking at how they improve the team, you can't look at the post All-Star break and say, oh, well, you're coming back with the same team you did last year. The final 27 games of the season are not the roster that they had last year. So I don't know if that just a short-term memory of what this roster looked like at the beginning of last season. Even if you look at the final 27 games, you had De'Aaron Fox miss 10 or 12 games. You had Haliburton tweak his knee. You had Harrison Barnes had an adductor injury. He missed some time. You had Marvin Bagley miss some more time, who was just coming back off an injury. We never did get to see this team with the pieces, with the Mo Harkless, with the Terrence Davis on the court at the same time. So while it's not a dramatic change from what the season ended, it's a very dramatic change from what last off season, what the team they started the season with. It's just completely different. Last season, we talked about it. I think they might have had 6 players. And one of those players is Tyrese Haliburton, that you had no idea what you were getting. Right. You had no idea that he was going to be that good. So you walked into the season and, Marvin Bagley had played 13 games a year before. So you had Fox, Buddy Hield, Rashawn, you had Harrison Barnes, and then you start to run out of names. Bielitsa, at that point, you knew wasn't going to play. Bagley, you had no idea what you're getting. Corey Joseph is a solid veteran. Okay. And then where do I go? I'm kind of done. I'm kind of
Whiteside.
Well, Whiteside, I don't consider a rotational player coming into the season. I didn't and I don't Jabari Parker. And then the 5 guys that were on the main roster that were either second round picks or undrafted in previous 2 drafts, they're not part of the equation. So how many players do they have? And then now look at their roster and like, okay, you're 11 deep. You're 11 deep, and that's not including Chimezie Metu, Damian Jones, who are better than anything they walked into the season last year at the end of the bench. They just are. And so I think it's a much better roster than it was at the beginning of last season. And it's a little tweaked difference than it was after the All-Star break. But again, if they stayed healthy down the stretch, how do they finish? Do they finish 2 or 3 games better? And if they did, is that enough to get them into the play-in game? Probably. It's really close.
27 days from right now, James Ham shows up at the Golden One Center for season number 12?
12. My 12th, yeah.
Season number 12. Is Buddy Hield there?
Man, you guys keep asking me this. You asked me this
because each day passes and he's still here, and it's like I have it on my notes. Ask James Ham every damn week if Buddy Hield is going to be here when training camp starts.
As of right now, yeah.
He is.
And as of right now, he might be starting at the 3. Harrison Barnes could be at the 4. As of right now, Marvin Bagley could be there, and he could be starting at the 4. And then Harrison Barnes is at the 3, and Buddy's coming off the bench. I think it's really interesting. I think
if Buddy's here, Marvin's here.
Yeah,
I think if I don't know how Bagley gets traded separately.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, you're not giving him up unless because at this point, they're a package deal that equals 30
$10 million. Yeah.
$34 million. That gets you in the ballpark with any of the big boys. So, so does Tristan Thompson as far as contracts go. So, if you're just looking for a salary filler and stuff like that, you can get there using Tristan Thompson as well. But yeah, it's tough. There is, I guess, a possibility that Buddy and Tristan Thompson could go in a big deal and Marvin Bagley could be left behind. And then in that situation, I'm perfectly fine with that. As long as you know that you got another player that can play 30 something minutes a night at the power forward position in case Bagley can't go, then you're okay.
I believe, sorry, Kenny, I believe Buddy can still be effective here.
Why not? He can still shoot threes, right? And look, I'll say there are plenty of things I could say negative about Buddy Hield, but what I'll tell you is that he's always ready to play and he wants to play.
Sure.
And he's a physical specimen. He's one of the hardest workers you're ever going to run into. He's actually a good guy. He makes his teammates laugh. It's not like he's this horrific person that just has to go. He's a good dude and he's got a skill, an elite skill. It's not just that he can shoot the 3, but there are only a handful of players in the league that can shoot 10 3-pointers a game. They're just that in itself, the ability to shoot in that kind of volume is just very unique. And so to be honest with you, if he's here, that's fine. As long as his role is different than it was last year. And it is because Tyrese Haliburton is a starting shooting guard. So I'm not sure where you go from there.
Real quick, James, we're going to get you out here on this. Just a question. Who do you think is better today? Buddy Hield or Terrence Davis?
Buddy Hield.
I think Terrence Davis is better than Buddy Hield.
Yeah, I'm still going to say Buddy Hield. Again, there's something about having one elite skill. And while Terrence does a lot of cool things, he doesn't have one of them that he's elite at. He can handle the ball, but he's not an elite passer or dribbler. He can slash the rim, but he's not quite elite at it. He can shoot the 3-pointer. He's really good, but is he elite? Can you can't count on that game in and game out? So is he a better defender? He's probably more rangy and better at steals. But at the end of the day, there's something about having a repeatable skill, which is why Buddy Hield makes, $23 million and Terrence Davis makes $4.5 million or whatever it is, I still think that he's a better player.
So let's just bring the whole show for full circle then. Buddy Hield or Andrew Wiggins?
Who would I choose?
Yeah.
It's Buddy.
Really?
It depends on the situation, but two factors. Number one, the elite skill, which we already talked about, which I don't think Wiggins has. He's not an elite scorer. I don't think he's any better a scorer than Buddy is. The other problem is that Buddy Hield's contract goes 23, 21, 19. Wiggins goes
does not
23, 33, like 35, 37. Ooh. Like it goes crazy. Like that's a huge factor. The difference between for the 76ers, because if you make a deal that gets you up like almost a straight swap, there's a possibility you go over the luxury tax, right? So Wiggins versus Buddy Hield, if they go over the tax, is going to cost them basically more than dollar for dollar because they've gone over the tax multiple times. So it could be up to like that $10 million difference can be anywhere between 20 and 30 million bucks. Like it just in luxury tax. Like I'm taking that deal, and you almost have to have Wiggins in the deal to make it, right? But then you're going to want to throw in, they're going to want all those players, those young guys, right? All of those guys make money. They're all first round picks. So, a guy like Weissman makes $9 or $10 million a year as a second pick in the draft. And you have to ask yourself this: who would you rather have, Weissman or Marvin Bagley? Because as of right now, they're both number 2 picks. One of them had a knee injury last year.
They're the same guy.
I'm gonna go watch Wiggins film now the rest of the day. James Ham, you're the absolute best.